Each of us in this room is 16 years old. This is good news to some of you, I suspect. The cells forming our stomachs are only 5 days old. That is, they're replaced every 5 days. And the molecules forming those cells every few minutes. In just the last minute, each of us in this room shed 35,000 skin cells. Our skin completely regenerates every 2 weeks. Our skeletons, about every 10 years. 16 years, then, is the average age of the tissue in our bodies. Our bodies are in constant flux. Old bits are discarded, new bits take their place. Constant regeneration requires constant input. In other words, we need to eat. We've talked about water and we've talked about life. It's time to talk about dinner or breakfast. There are pieces of the biosphere upon which everything else rests. They're called primary producers, or autotrophs by the scientists. They are in the oceans and on land, and most of them are microscopic. In the oceans, phytoplankton underlie everything. Thousands of microscopic species living near the surface in the light, moving energy from the sun into substance and nourishing everything else. Like krill, which feed fish, squid, penguins, whales, all of it feeding us. In the process, plankton produce half the world's oxygen, half of the breath that you just took produced by these fine fellows. On land, of course, are the plants, but underlying plants is soil. And never in my life did I dream that I would be fascinated by soil. But it turns out soil is fascinating. It's not lifeless dust, but rock pounded to clay by water over millions of years and then infused with life. Just a handful contains billions of living organisms. In some soils, 1 million species in just a thimbleful. The living component of an acre of soil may contain 900 pounds of earthworms, 2,400 pounds of bacteria, 890 pounds of algae, arthropods and algae, that's insects and their salads, all in an acre of soil just a few inches deep. And topsoil is just a few inches deep, forming at 1 inch per decade to sometimes less than 1 inch per century. The world's dinner, brought to you by phytoplankton and soil. And so it is that through our system of rigorous science, we know that the health and well-being of most of the life on Earth, including human life, is inextricably tied to the health of the oceans and to the health of soil. But today, science is telling us that all is not well with the oceans, and all is not well with soil. So while living oceans warm and turn to acid, we toxify the living soil and watch it just blow away. So arising from this Earth system is us. Our civilization, itself a complex system, comprising many structures. But fundamentally, we need something to eat, we need something to do, and we need energy to produce the things that we eat and do the things that we do. Our systems of food, energy, and economy then form the pillars of our society. These pillars are global. Grain grown in South America on land owned by the Japanese feeds livestock in Europe and fuels automobiles in Vermont. These pillars are interconnected. Politics in Russia or economics in Mexico drive the cost of energy in Indiana and affect food in Korea. Also, and finally, the structure formed by these pillars is fundamentally flawed. Not a single piece of it, as currently realized, is sustainable. And this assessment is not cynicism, but science. It is physics and chemistry, biology, and ecology. For the pillars of our society are eating away the natural systems, the foundations upon which they're built. They rely heavily on non-renewable stocks and consume renewable stocks faster than the earth can replenish them. If you fold a piece of paper in half, you double its thickness. Fold it again, it doubles again. 8 folds will get you a piece of paper 1 inch thick. Just 4 more folds will get you a piece of paper 1 foot thick. And just 12 more folds will give you a piece of paper 1 mile thick. Except you know you're never going to get there. Something's going to fall apart long before. This is exponential growth in action. Everything is small until it's huge, and everything is fine until it's not. Our society has been growing exponentially since the Industrial Revolution. Along the way, our societal structures, we have disconnected from the principles governing natural systems. And this growth and disconnection is what underlies all of the drivers of our unsustainability. But through science, we know this. We can respond. As a result, we have an opportunity to transform before we collapse. Will we choose to do so? Or will we be like bacteria growing in a lab dish, doubling their numbers and consumption each minute? And when the dish is only half full, its inhabitants look around and say, "My, how prosperous we are." When in reality, only 1 single minute, just 1 generation remains until the resources are exhausted and prosperity turns to collapse. In sustainability speak, our society comprises systems of bubbles, inflating until they burst. And one way or another, these bubbles are going away. There is the food bubble. Worldwide, more than 300 million people are fed by overpumping aquifers, for example. 3/4 of the world's fisheries are either depleted or in severe distress, with all fisheries in danger of depletion by 2050, less than 40 years. There is the carbon bubble. In short, we rely almost entirely on non-renewable fuels for energy. Already we've consumed half of our oil, and the duration of the remaining supply can be measured in decades. Future historians will depict humankind's reliance on fossil fuels like this. Through science, we know that our system of energy is not sustainable, and the time has come for us to believe what we know. And there is the consumption bubble. We have consumed 1/3 of the planet's natural resource base in the last 30 years. 1/3 in the last 30 years. And even with billions of people still in poverty, our voracious consumption is beyond the Earth's capacity to regenerate. Far beyond. By science's most rigorous, comprehensive estimates, we currently require 1.4 planets to sustain our consumption. Now, the number might be 1.3 or it might be 1.5. The point is, it's a number greater than 1. Only 1 person in 20 is American. Yet we in America take 1 bite out of every 4 from the planetary table. 60,000 plastic bags, the number we choose to consume in the United States every 5 seconds. $2 million plastic bottles, the number we choose to consume in the United States every 5 minutes. And while doubling our consumption in the past 50 years, we in the United States have seen our happiness decline. If everyone consumed at the rate we in the United States consume, we'd need 4 planets to sustain us. In economic circles, this is known as living off of the capital, a practice inherently and unarguably unsustainable. Through rigorous science, then, we know that our growth-based system of economy is not sustainable, and the time has come for us to believe what we know. You might say that these systems are hugely successful, producing cheap food, cheap energy, cheap consumer goods. But as many have noted, the appearance of cheap has been achieved by keeping costs off the books. Costs to our environment, to our health, and to our happiness. In short, costs to our well-being. Tens of thousands of premature deaths from burning coal. Hundreds of thousands of cases of respiratory disease, for example, are not visible on our electric bills, but instead appear on our health bills. Appalachians living in West Virginia, near mountaintop obliteration sites, are 50% more likely to die of cancer, 42% more likely to suffer birth defects. Their disease, apparently, is a price that you and I are willing to pay for our cheap energy. And there are many such places, such sacrifice zones, in my nation, in your nation, and in the world. Incredibly, though, as high as these costs are, without fundamental change, they will not be the highest. Global climate change is a phenomenon driven by our society's unsustainable institutions. The deforestation that accompanies our food and consumer goods systems, the massive and rapid consumption of fossil fuels in our energy system, and the drive for ever more growth and consumption in our economic system. The scale of the change we can expect on our current path is staggering. Recent projections now place the median global average temperature rise by 2100 at 9 degrees Fahrenheit, essentially constituting an entirely new planet, about 5 degrees Celsius. And nothing can make this point better than the tale of the polar ice cap. This past summer, the polar ice cap melted back to a new record low, a full 3 weeks before the end of the Arctic summer, and then kept on melting, falling to 1/5 its level of just 30 years ago. 1/5. One distinguished researcher in the field believes we may see ice-free Arctic summers in less than 3 years. Most researchers believe we will see such summers in less than a decade. On our current path, 1 mammal in 4, 1 bird in 8, and 1 amphibian in 3 are faced with extinction this century. Worldwide, the extinction rate has increased an estimated 1,000-fold. It is now recognized as the planet's 6th major extinction event. We are in the process of losing our life support system. A few decades to act is what our science tells us. Any longer, and the risk of catastrophic impact rises sharply. We are tickling the dragon's tail. Our climate choice is graphed in carbon, past and future. More carbon means more change. The black is where we've been. The red is where we're going. Blue is where we could be going. To achieve blue, though, we must follow the science. We cannot burn West Virginia's coal or our own. We cannot burn Canada's tar sands or Venezuela's. We cannot burn Siberia's natural gas or North Dakota's. We cannot. And this is not ideology, it's not idealism, it's not politics. This is physics, this is chemistry, this is biology, this is ecology. And this is what we know. Not through mysticism or intuition, but a canon of knowledge arising from evidence and observation. This is what we know. Our lifeboat has arrived at a crossroads, and the time has come for us to believe what we know.